most African parents, and many of you can relate to this, it's either you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you're an engineer, or you're a failure. it's everything else is, you're pretty much trash. Hey, what's up, fam? My name is Sahr Lebbie, and this is Africans in Tech. So, one of the reasons I decided to do Africans in Tech was because I work with an organization called Slint. So Slint is Sierra Leoneans in technology. Basically, it's a tech company that focuses on helping develop tech talent in Sierra Leone. We saw a lot of missing gaps, through sort of like that analysis and some of the work that we were doing and still doing right now. And working with a lot of individuals who are trying to get into tech and trying to get into that space. We saw a lot of things that we knew were missing. And I felt like this was the right opportune time to sort of like talk about just our journeys to get into tech and share that, because a lot of what we talked about with those individuals was very relational. There are a lot of people going through some of the same things that we went through when we were younger, trying to like break into the tech space and whatnot. So I felt like to create a platform in which all of us can talk about our experiences and share those experiences and help to guide others who are looking to get into the tech space. I think that's the reason for Africans in Tech. So my hope is that for those who are watching this episode and hopefully future episodes, they get encouraged, get motivated, and also get really good advice in terms of how to get into tech, how to stay into tech, how to traverse the different areas in tech, whether it be getting a promotion, whether it be, going to a different area within tech, because such a large space, whether it be networking outside of, just the 9 to 5, if that's what you're doing, whether it's scaling. So, hopefully you get some value out of this podcast. So a bit about myself. I was born in Sierra Leone, West Africa. I came here when I was 8. My dad was in the military at the time. I think one of the things that really encouraged me when I got here was, one of the first thing I saw was skyscrapers. And that was something that it was a marvel at the time, and it still is. It's a marvel of technology, right, and engineering. So coming here and kind of seeing those things, I saw sort of what America's, symbolizes for many who aren't here, the land of opportunities and of like great, achievements. So getting here, we moved around quite a bit. We were in Texas first, then we moved to, we were in Atlanta for like a day. We moved to Kansas, and then we moved to Texas, and then finally I spent most of my like teenage / early years in Maryland. So this is where I went, this being Maryland is where I went to undergrad. I was University of Maryland Terps alumni. I did my undergraduate there, kinesiology. I was trash when it comes to GPA. So for those who weren't the best at, school, I was one of those guys. I was focused on football and a bunch of other like silly stuff that, not necessarily silly, but things that I really shouldn't have been focused on at the time. I went to Salisbury State University for grad school. I also studied cardiopulmonary at the time. So I was looking to get into a PT role, PT being physical therapy. I had done some work post my undergrad, and I really wasn't sure, what route I really wanted to take. But I knew I was getting much more experience from the medical side than I had gotten any other field, really. So I just decided to go that route. And being younger, most African parents, and many of you can relate to this, it's either you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you're an engineer, or you're a failure. It's everything else is, you're pretty much trash. So that literally was my sort of pathways that I could take, So I wanted to get into the medical space. PT, being a doctor in physical therapy, essentially I was a doctor, right? But that's all. I think not necessarily my parents pushed me, but just sort of like the community overarching, like, I don't know, mindset. And I think that was just the thing I kept thinking about. I was like, okay, I need to be one of these, need to be in one of these careers, or I'm not doing something right. So post grad school, I started working at a hospital, Holy Cross Hospital, which was in Silver Spring. I met my wife when I was in grad school. Shout out to Sahr Lebbie. She moved up here from Georgia. She had finished grad school. We got married in 2014. And when she moved up here, I was literally in like the beginning of my career trying to figure out things, figure out if I'm going to be, either in the cardiopulmonary / stress testing field for the next couple years, or if I was going to try to go back to school, maybe, get my doctorate in PT, which was the plan all along. But I did that for about a year. So I graduated in 2013, got married 2014, and I was working in a hospital for about a year or so. And this is, I think, one of my biggest motivators to get into tech. I was working under the senior or lead stress tester at the time, and we were working with all different kinds of patients. So folks who had cardiac issues, folks who had some different sort of like reasons for being there, outside of having like, severe cardiac reasons. And I think at the time, my concern was how was I going to be able to scale in my career, being sort of second fiddle to, at the time, who my lead, who was there. So he was 60, so he was saying he was going to retire pretty soon. That was all good and dandy if it was going to be like a year, but then he started saying, yeah, I'll be gone in about 7 years, and this will all be yours. So if any of you have seen like the, Coming to America, move on to burgers and fries next. I was like, nah, this is not it. 7 years, this is not going to be my life right here. So I was, panicking at the time. I remember talking to Tia about, all right, I'm going to go back to school. I'll do social work. I'll do anything. This is not where I'm going to spend my next 7 years under this guy. And nice guy and everything, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. One of my boys called me shortly after that. Desmond, shout out to you. He was like, hey man, I'm in the tech space. I'm doing Linux engineering, and I think you'll be really good at it. So me and Des known each other for a bit, went to school in undergrad and all that. So I was like, all right, what do I got to do? He said, yeah, I went to a boot camp, and, they teach Linux, and they teach how to, really like, get your skill sets up in terms of being able to create users, do all these other like basic junior stuff. So I was like, all right, I can do it. So I think I contemplated for about a week or two, but then the motivation to kind of get into tech really kind of continued to drive further from there, just because nothing was really moving in the other direction, right? So I started a boot camp with Aperture Tech. Shout out to Aperture. And I was there for about 3 months. And basically I was just learning like how to deal with like users, creating users, modifying users, LVM, doing basic partitioning, things like that. Nothing really super crazy. So if you're not in that space, just know that it's really basic stuff, right? But at the end of the day, it taught me the basics of like how to learn technology. So it taught me like how to like focus on building sort of like your application package and building like your different stacks. So one of the things we focused on there was also a thing called LambStack. So LambStack stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, and whatnot. So at that time, it wasn't really like fancy, but it was something new to me. And learning that helped me to know that I can probably build a lot more on top of that. So 3 months in doing Linux, in about a month or so, I was doing Splunk. So I would probably say around like month 2 or so, I got introduced to Splunk. So I'm a Splunk engineer, for those who don't know, and for those who know what Splunk is, great. For those who don't, Splunk, in a really basic sense, is just a tool that allows you to look at data and analyze data. That's really all it is. So I'm a big LeBron fan, and I wanted to analyze some data regarding like LeBron versus the whole Jordan thing. Yes, I know Jordan is better than LeBron in terms of championships and all that jazz and being a GOAT, but I'm still a big LeBron fanatic, so I still wanted to analyze different sort of like data sets and data points around where LeBron kind of differs and is a little bit better statistically versus MJ. So looking at a lot of those data sets, I can prove a lot of my points by ingesting that stuff, and it was free data. So whether it's from, ESPN, Yahoo, any other site that has free data, you can download that stuff and put it into Splunk and analyze it and make sense out of it, whichever way you feel like, right? So you're just painting a picture by looking at different data sets. Doing that for probably about a month or so, I was setting up the agents, forwarders, and stuff like that, and then doing a whole bunch of other little elementary stuff. That got me into learning more about how to play with data and how to manipulate it and how to grab data. So I started getting to scripting and things like that. But at the same time, I was, doing my interviews, right? So, doing the 3-month boot camp or, 4-month boot camp and trying to figure out which space to get into. I was pretty adept at Linux, but at least I thought so. But I was also fairly knowledgeable in terms of setting up like agents, with the forwarders and stuff with Splunk. So I started interviewing, and this is when I got like a reality check very soon. And many of you who have done boot camps, you will get this. If you get out of a boot camp and you've not done a lot of practical enterprise grade work, so meaning that you've not worked in like a real live job setting, doing a lot of the things that they have to deal with, it makes things kind of difficult. So I started interviewing for junior Linux positions. I was just saying, hey, I've done some Linux work. And another caveat, I had a friend named Yanu, shout out to Yanu, that helped me with internship. So Yanu basically gave me a bunch of tasks like, hey, go look up what Hadoop is, study Hadoop, go look up like what some random application is and go look at that. So I did that for quite a bit of time, and I learned a lot about just different applications and how those things interlace with other applications. So that gave me a little bit more foundation to talk about things, but I had no clue from a practical standpoint how to apply those applications to like build it, right? I just knew just basic knowledge about it, but it was still helpful because I could talk to the things that I learned and I read about. So I was really hungry in that sense of just kind of consuming any sort of information around tech that can help me get into the space that I wanted to get into, which was just more of more system administration, really. So, going back to our interviews, right? I got a interview with, I think it was MailChimp. So MailChimp, they ripped me a new one, man. It was really bad. At the time, I mentioned I didn't really know advanced stuff, right? So I did a bit of scripting, but not too much. So for any of you who don't know what for loops are, it's basically just a way to iterate through a process that you do a lot of times. So for every time I pick up this phone, say yes, 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 yes. Imagine that's a loop right there, right? So the guy asked me, "What's a for loop?" I was like, "For what?" That's literally my answer to him. I mean, dude got up and walked out. That was probably the most embarrassing interview I've ever had. He literally got up and walked out. Like, can you imagine? Like, asking. To this day, I'm still laughing about it because it was so embarrassing. But after that, man, I tell you what, I researched the heck out of for loops. I did like probably 34 loops after that interview. I was like, ain't no way in heck somebody's going to ask me what for loop is. I'm not going to know what that is. So post that, I did all the work I needed to do, and I ended up knowing, scripting to the basic degree. Splunk, thank God for this, called me. This was, I think, like 2 weeks after that. So Splunk called me through Tech Systems. So Tech Systems is a recruiting company. We'll talk about that throughout the course of the podcast, how recruiting companies work and whatnot. But Tech Systems called me and they basically said, "Hey, we have a role with Splunk and we see that you've done some Splunk work." So, and the Splunk work that they're talking about on my resume was just me like literally researching how to do like set up forwarders and analyze data out of, for myself. It wasn't really work I've done for enterprise or for like bigger companies or anything like that. So I was like, yeah, I've done Splunk work. So I got the interview, 4-round interview. It was one round, but it was like a 4-hour interview process. So there was initial screening that happened with Texasism. So if you want to count that as 2 rounds, that's fine. But there was initial screening. They just kind of talked me through like my experience and all that other jazz. And then after that, they sent me to Splunk proper, which was in Tyson's Corner in Maryland at the time, or Virginia rather. So when I got to the interview, I met Dre, Joy, I met Renzo, Bo, all those guys. I still remember their names because they helped me get into my first legitimate career in tech. So shout out to those guys, 100%. Every time I think about where I'm at now, it's because of those guys. Andrew, all you guys, man. Thank you all. So anyway, through the interview, I was asked about, have I ever set up Linux, Linux box, and have I ever set up forwarders? Have I ever done sort of any sort of analysis with Splunk at all? And they really didn't care too much about like having enterprise grade experience with Splunk. They just wanted to know that I've touched their tool and I've learned a little bit about it. So for any of you who are looking to get into the tech space and specifically working with a unique tool set, they have a lot of free versions of, most tools. Please utilize your time to research the tool, build it, set it up, get a hobby out of it or create a hobby out of it so that you can speak more to it when you are doing your interviews. But anyway, I literally told him about my experience with Splunk, how I set up GeoServer and I recorded the data from GeoServer. I uploaded that and I was analyzing that data. And then I also set up forwarders. And I was grabbing data from, I think at the time I was analyzing climate data from Sierra Leone. I was also analyzing the, LeBron Jordan data. I used that in my interview. And the guys were like really down to earth. And they, just talked me through like the process of like, end-to-end networking and things like that, and how Splunk can kind of help with that. And the interview went really well. I mean, it was like a 4-hour long interview. There was a little bit of breaks in between, but that was intense, right? So imagine you just finished a boot camp. You went through an interview that you just like were destroyed on, like, 2 weeks earlier, and then now you have to sit in a 4-hour interview. That was intimidating as heck. But at the end of the day, I had nothing to lose. I just did the work and I interviewed and I just, trusted in what I learned and I used that, right? So fast forward, I guess, 2-3 years, I was now well-versed in Splunk. I had moved. I stayed with Splunk for I think 8 months or so, they wanted to have me convert and become full-time, since the tech systems I was contract, so they wanted me to become full-time. But my wife and I decided we wanted to move down to Georgia, just because of, warmer pastures. So we moved down here, and I started like navigating to like different spaces, in relation to Splunk. So there's a bunch of different Splunk, not necessarily careers, but titles you can hold. So you can be a Splunk engineer, you can be a Splunk admin, you can be a Splunk architect, you can be a Splunk consultant. There's so many different areas. You can be a security engineer that still does like primarily Splunk. There's a lot of different titles you can hold. So I did a lot of job hopping at the time, and I think that was probably the best thing that I did for myself and for my career. Not only because I learned different like skill sets and work with different people, but the fact that other companies were in need of Splunk engineers at the time, my salary, just kept going up and up and up. So for those who were running like the starting salary for Splunk at the time, this was 2015, 2016. So at the time, maybe like 85K or something like that. So that was, at the time was really good for me. Before then, I think I was making like I said, working $22 an hour in Maryland was not the move for a newly married person or husband that's trying to make a life for, myself with my wife, and we had a daughter a couple years later. But that was not the move at all. So going from making around roughly 30 something K to like 85K, man, I was happy as heck, right? So there are other folks that finished the boot camp that was making a lot more, but I was happy where I was at. So then down a few years later, so hopping jobs, I think first was like a 20K bump, and then there was like a 40K bump, and then there was like another 20K bump. So you can start imagining the numbers after that, starting from like 85, right? So that was really helpful for me at the time. So knowing like that I could get into a career lane, or that I've gotten into a career lane that I can accelerate what my salary was based upon like moving from different, positions and different companies. That was a blessing. And I wasn't really honestly trying to do it. It was just more of like I wanted different experiences as well. And it wasn't leaving on bad terms at all. I took a bunch of different short-term contracts, and when those contracts ended, I just went to a different company. Again, working with a recruiting company, they literally have different placements, because the way it works is the recruiting company would get a certain amount for placing you there. So they get placement fees, right? So if my salary is, let's say 100K, they would get paid 120K. So basically they make 20K off of me just working there for them. But oftentimes it's not that. So tech systems and other companies, not just tech. So tech, I would say they're probably one of the better ones. Some companies would place you and they'll give you half the rate of what, you would typically get. So if you're making 100K, you're probably getting, your billet is probably like 200K. So they'll take another 100K off top, and to cover fees and all these other things, whether it's benefits and all that other stuff. But that doesn't amount to the other 100K, but that's just an example. But there are a lot of companies that do that. So one of the reasons I started also trying to work for myself was because of knowing that. So 1099 myself, and make sure I charge a rate that is comparable to what I think I should be making. So if a company's paying me 200 whatever K for something, you shouldn't be making another 200K off of me just because I signed a contract with you. Like, you're not doing anything. I'm literally doing all the work. I'm building all of the solutions, myself, and you're not doing much. But I am appreciative of the fact that you placed me into this role. So I think you should still get something from that, but not to that degree, right? So learning a lot of those things was
very insightful and helpful for me. And I started teaching at the time as well others how to do that. So we're going to rewind back just a bit. So 2017, we moved down to Georgia. Around 2018, I started dabbling in teaching a little bit Splunk. So the idea really was just trying to help people out. It wasn't really like, here, go make six figures. It was just, here, let me help you get into Splunk so that you can hopefully learn a new skill set. And then that skill set can hopefully help you land a job. And at that time, Splunk was hot. I'm talking about like burning hot, man. You were a Splunk engineer, you probably got picked up. And if you were decent, you got picked up like within, I would say, a week, 2 weeks max. If your resume was out there and they knew that you were good at Splunk, I mean, the market was hot. And at the time, not a lot of folks were in the tech space in general. I think tech, as of like 2019, 2020-ish, started becoming more of a thing, right? But prior to that, I mean, there was a lot of availability and a lot of openings for Splunk engineers, and especially good Splunk engineers. They paid a premium price for you. So, we think about, supply demand, right? That skyrocketed our rates at the time. So eventually, markets started catching up, or people started catching up, I should say, to the market. So a lot of folks started doing these boot camps and stuff like that, and started getting placed into like these Splunk roles. And unfortunately, it watered down the market really bad. You got a lot of newbies that got into the field that didn't know anything about like Splunk. They'll just kind of do like a really basic boot camp, get in and just start destroying environments. Like they'll get in, start setting up stuff that was just trash. And then a lot of times they'll call folks like myself and Mike and others to come and fix up. Like, hey, please, we've had some folks that, and it will be companies as well. Companies will bring in like folks that they will just hire not off the street, but they'll just hire people that they really didn't do interviews well, and it will be really bad. And that created a really good market for, folks like myself, like more of the senior folks, right? So my goal in teaching was to help individuals who didn't know Splunk to know Splunk well enough where they don't go ruin a company. So if you get hired, your role isn't to necessarily be a SME at it. Your role is to be able to help the company do the task that they need and then build yourself up to be a SME. So going into a Splunk role, many of the folks that I helped get into the space were junior admins, were mid-level admins, were folks who did some Linux work. And the way I did that, I structured it, was to have them do some setting up EC2 instances in AWS, setting up some Azure instances as well, and then also spinning up Splunk on their own personal laptops, forwarding the data over to like to a centralized location, and then being able to manipulate the data from there. So kind of mimicking a lot of stuff that we'll see in production. So we'll use like open source tools, Snort, other IDS systems, IPS systems, things like that. And we'll use a lot of technologies that you'll see in, enterprise environments, but just the open source versions. And SecRepo had, data that you can download for free. SecRepo.com, if you've never used it, it literally has free data you can download, and then you can just play with it. Literally like production like data, whether it's FTP, malware, or whatever it is, has all that kind of data that you could play with. So that's kind of how I structured my courses to be able to help folks to get in. And then they were building also scalable solutions. My thought behind getting folks into tech was so that we'll help produce good quality engineers. And to this day, I think I've helped probably 50, 60 engineers get into the workforce. And some who weren't in tech and some who were transitioning. So desktop support, some who were doing some, I think Linux admin, they wanted to actually either learn Splunk or learn some other applications. Some of the folks that I taught end up becoming like IDM or identity management folks. So they were doing like Okta and some of these other various applications. They extended their skill sets to do things that I wasn't even doing that. I didn't even like contemplate doing. Some folks became security experts. Some were DevOps engineers. So my idea in doing that was just to sort of give back. kind of staying around that same lane, 2018-ish, a guy contacted me from Maryland. Shout out to Elaji. He contacted me and said, "Hey, man, I heard that you're pretty good at Splunk, and I need a little bit of help to kind of learn a couple of things." So I was like, "All right, cool. What do you need?" He basically just asking me to help him understand some things with Splunk, and I think networking as well. So I said, "All right, let me put you in a WhatsApp group, and we can just kind of chat through there." So we're chatting, and then he added another friend, and then from there we just started adding more people because we were just talking tech and stuff like that. And that's sort of how like Slint, which is Sierra Leoneans in technology, kind of grew. So I basically was like, all right, these folks are interested in learning, different things about Splunk. Let me help them with stuff that I knew that I was pretty good at, and I can help kind of relay that knowledge in a way that was helpful. And they added other folks, and Tamba ended up coming, Ali, Thomas, Abdullah, Aminata, both in A Squared, and Jalo and Conde. They both came in. I mean, right now, developed more into like a legitimate organization. 501c and all that other stuff is already set up. And our goal really became to help those in Sierra Leone to get into this tech space that weren't in the tech space, but also those who are here as well who were interested in like getting into tech, whether you want to be a cybersecurity engineer, whether you wanted to do data analysis, you wanted to be a project manager, scrum master, regardless of what field you wanted to get into, we wanted to be able to have a platform that can, help connect individuals together. And that's, literally where Africans in Tech kind of was birthed in terms of like the idea behind that was, what if we can create a space where not just Sierra Leoneans, but also Africans in general across the continent can build together, based upon common solutions or common applications that they work with. They can build solutions that can help drive change and drive sort of like the next stage in Africa, whether it be region specific or whether it be country specific or even continent as a whole, right? So, that's the idea of Africans in Tech there. Right now, where I'm at as well with the whole Africans in Tech piece is being able to talk about technologies that we're all passionate about, but also talking about our journeys to learning those technologies and being able to enable somebody else that is either trying to get into the space or is already in the space, but they're looking, from a promotional standpoint to level up a bit, or whether it's even just salary, they're trying to, make a little bit more money. How to navigate that space well, and to be able to get mentors possibly. So as you continue to watch more and more, we're going to have more and more people who are experts. I got friends that are at Google, the Facebook, Netflix, all the FANG organizations that you can think about, but also folks who actually have legitimate startups that are valued in the millions that are doing really well right now for themselves. I'm going to have those folks on the show to be able to talk about their experience and how they were able to build, into the space. Eventually, the hope is to be able to, of course, not just talk about these things, but actually apply these things in our respective countries, right? So the idea behind data analysis and being able to relate that to, Africans in Tech is to be able to take analyzing data with a tool like Splunk and be able to apply that in a country like Sierra Leone by taking different data sets that they use, whether they're doing manual processes or processes that could use further automation. The idea is to be able to bring those solutions to those different countries, and to be able to help standardize their tech stack and tech space in a way that you know is revolutionary, but also in a way that can help breed sort of that camaraderie that I honestly think is missing as a whole within the continent. So I know there's probably a bunch of others out there who are doing podcasts. I've seen quite a few about tech in Africa, but I think in terms of being able to connect the bridge and bringing engineers from all over the world, that's the difference that I'm hoping to bring with Africans in tech, and then also to be able to talk about technologies in a way that simplifies things. So we're going to be doing whiteboarding sessions where literally I'm going to get on a whiteboard and talk in plain English for somebody that's never been in tech or doesn't understand what Splunk is or what data analysis is, how that works. How do you grab data from your laptop and be able to analyze who's logging into your laptop, who's doing whatever on your laptop, and if you lose your laptop, how to track that. Like simple things like that, that's practical, but it helps individuals to be able to kind of ramp up on their tech skills and then maybe build upon that and become a professional someday. So that's the idea behind Africans in Tech.
All right, so one of the things we talked about was doing a whiteboard session, right, for Africans in Tech. So we're going to talk really basics of what Splunk is. I'll give two really simple examples, and then moving forward, this will be a theme for this podcast. So Splunk. So imagine you have, we'll use a student, right? Their name is Dunye. So another student has a laptop named Dunye. So Dunye has that laptop, and they do a bunch of things on their laptop. So they go to Facebook, they go to Amazon, they check their bank accounts, they do a bunch of stuff on their laptop. So Dunye wants to be able to tell whenever her laptop is turned on, and then whenever it's turned off, whenever she logs in or somebody else logs into the laptop. She has a sister called Ashley that also uses the same laptop. Ashley goes on different sites and checks her bank account and other stuff like that. So what Splunk is, or what Splunk can do, is a tool that can literally sit, and this is like their logo, that can sit on your laptop. So you can install it on your laptop, and then you can give it instructions. You can say, okay, I want you to look at whenever somebody goes to a website, so www, and does whatever. But not only that, we'll step it back a bit. Whenever somebody, in this case, Ashley or Dunye, opens up the laptop and logs in, give me information about that. And what it can do then, it can create for you a nice little dashboard, which it's a web interface dashboard that you can go to, and then you can look at different sort of like data sets about what's happening. So in this case, we see Ashley logs on, if we do a pie chart, she logs on 70%. This is a horrible, diagram of a pie chart, but she logs on 70% more than Dunye does. So Ashley uses this laptop a little bit more. Other things you can tell from it. Ashley goes to, Facebook a lot less than Dunye. Other things you can look at. Whenever Ashley uses a laptop, because you can collect metrics around how your laptop is doing in terms of like power consumption, things like that. All of that stuff is digital. You have information about it. Whenever Ashley uses a laptop, it runs up on the memory a lot more, and then the laptop starts overheating. Whenever Dunye uses it, the laptop is not in use as much, but it's not being used in the most optimal sense because Dunye goes to like, podcasters.com or goes to africanstech.com and watches some random videos. So Those are things that you can sort of make sense out of just from a laptop basis. So just wanted to kind of set a really basic precedence there. You have two people that use a laptop. You set Splunk up on that laptop. Splunk monitors information around like CPU, the memory, the disk space that's being used. So if Ashley installs more programs on it, also, another thing, it monitors the apps on the laptop. It also monitors who gets on the laptop, when they get on the laptop, and how they use the laptop. So these are really simple basics in terms of data that you can get from just a single laptop, right? And all of this is when you have people who are professionals to try to understand the why. That's what they pay security folks and other data engineers and stuff for, to understand the why. So the other thing, if we were to take this a little bit further, when they get to www. Let's say apple.com, Apple has Splunk also set up. Let's just use hypothetical here. So Apple also has Splunk set up that monitors their website. So it monitors when Ashley logs in from Atlanta to apple.com from some sub area in Atlanta, and she's looking to buy a gold iPhone 15. But not only Ashley, you have let's say 500,000 other people who are based in Atlanta that are also looking to buy the same gold iPhone 15. So the way Apple can use this data is, okay, the gold iPhone 15 is selling really hot in Atlanta during the month of May 2024. Let us send another 500,000 phones to local stores in the area so we don't run out. And that way we have inventory to be able to cover the gold iPhone 15 because it's hot. Similarly, because we know that the black iPhone 15 is trash, is not selling well, let's pull back inventory and scale this down and maybe find another area where black iPhone 15 is, really hot right now, right? So wherever it's hot at, let's redirect that to maybe Chicago. So again, this is just looking at really simple data points and just making inferences of like the data itself. So in this case, you can use this to look at for operational use cases where we're talking about how is someone using a laptop or a server or whatever it may be, how somebody's using that system. And then down here, we're looking at maybe security to see, from an application standpoint, what apps are they, putting on there, who's getting on the laptop, when are they getting on the laptop, how are they getting on the laptop. So the why is also could be a security portion. And then here you have more of a business function where you are looking at, okay, we have users or customers from Atlanta, 500,000 of them are buying gold iPhones. Let's use that data now to be able to point them to our store that needs to refill on, backfill on 500,000 iPhones that they just sold, so that if customers who are now still looking for the gold iPhone 15s aren't finding it, it's not because we don't have them in stock. It's because they stopped literally buying it. It's, it's not there. So on our part as a company, Apple, we're going to stock these gold iPhone 15s in advance because the data that we pulled from Splunk the tool tells us that we have an influx of people looking for 500,000 iPhones in the month of May 2024. Let's make sure we have enough iPhones. And in the iPhone 15s that we were making and trying to ship to Atlanta, if they're not selling this month, let's scale back a little bit. And then let's maybe reroute some of those or that inventory to Chicago where it's hot right now. So these are just like some sample use cases that folks use Splunk for. And this is from a individual standpoint. But if we were to look at this from a company standpoint, I'll draw that in just a second and make this really simple. So this would be the second drawing, and we'll use a company as an example to talk about how you can use Splunk to make sense of your data. And we're just going to expand it a little bit from just kind of what we just discussed. All right, so we finished with the example of Dunier and Ashley, right? So now, let's say Dunier gets hired. So again, Dunier gets hired at Microsoft. All right. So she's now a system engineer. So she's a system engineer that works at, if I can spell, I think I did spell it, E-E-R. There we go. So she's a system engineer at Microsoft, right? So her responsibility really is to make sure that all the servers that, all the laptops, we'll say that, we'll make it really simple. All the laptops that are given to new Microsoft employees have the latest software and are patched and when we say patched, it means that they're secure, has the latest updates so that if their laptop joins on a bad network, it doesn't get compromised because of like really simple vulnerabilities that can be remediated, right? So she's responsible for, let's say, 40,000 laptops. So is Dunier going to ask 40,000 people to bring their laptops to her so that she can make sure that they get patched and all that? No. There are systems that are in tech world that are built, or applications that are built to be able to address all of these laptops in one go. So meaning you can literally apply the same patch. Let's say you needed to update, I don't know, a web browser. You wanted to update Firefox across all 40,000 of these laptops. What you can do, you can set Splunk, and there's multiple ways to do this. I'm just using a really basic example. You can set Splunk to monitor the versions of Firefox on all 40,000 laptops, and you can deploy that on build. So whenever you build a laptop, one of the things that you can have it do is you can have it check back into a sort of like a home repository is what we call it. Like it's basically, think about like a home base that says, hey, you always check in here for any updates that you need, right? So this would be like their security base. We'll just call that. There's another term we're going to use more in the future, but for right now, we're just going to really keep it simple. So this has all their updates, right? So updates. So if all the laptops are checking in for updates, to make sure that it has all the different things it needs while connected to the network or domain, one of the things that you want to do is to make sure that as they check in, you need to validate that all the updates are there. This system itself can do that, but you can also have Splunk do that for you and then send alerts and stuff like that when any of these systems are out of compliance. Let's say user, let's say Sahr is a user here, and Sahr is an admin of his laptop. He says, screw this. I have I have Firefox 2024 version 3. I'm going to go back down to Firefox 2024 version 1 instead. And then that has a big vulnerability. Like, I don't like some of the things in Firefox, version 3. This causes possibly the whole company to be at risk because If Sahr's Firefox gets hacked and his user's account and other things that maybe he's stored in Firefox, the browser itself, gets hacked, there's a possibility it can cause downchain effects depending on what Sahr's role is and what he can do. So you want to get an alert whenever Sahr decides to be a knucklehead and downgrades his version of Firefox to anything less than what the actual version should be. So this is Sahr, and then his Firefox version. And then this is the standard. So if Sahr's version is anything less than that, what you can tell to Splunk is send an alert. And then this alert now goes to Dunye, and she's like, hey, what in the heck? Why is your version now less than, that? So this can also then be rerouted to security. And then security can check that out and say, okay, why the heck are you downgrading your Microsoft Firefox version when we clearly told you it needs to be at the standard that we want it to be at? You can send it also to Sahr's boss. You can send it to a bunch of other folks. And then you can create programs around this as well, so that once Dunye gets this, it immediately alerts this security center right here, and then it forces Sahr's update, or it locks his computer and does whatever. There's a whole bunch of automations and things that you can do in place where you can do different sorts of checks and balances, so that Dunye doesn't have to do a manual now. Let's say you have 30 knuckleheads like Sahr or 100 knuckleheads like Sahr to do that. She doesn't have to go now and run that. You can have checks and balances where Sahr's system has Splunk on it that notices his version is less, sends an alert to Dunye. That alert triggers something else that then checks to the security center. Security center says, okay, cool. We now need to push an alert, or not alert, but push the new package back up to Sahr's laptop, or even lock Sahr out because he's done something silly and dumb. So again, a quick recap, right? So we're talking Splunk here. We're talking to user Dunye. Dunye is a system administrator for Microsoft. So Dunye has to manage 40,000 laptops, so these 40,000 laptops. And Dunye is responsible for making sure that they all get all their updates. Dunye also has Sahr and a few other people that are managers as admins of their own personal laptops. So when Dunye applies updates, Sahr didn't like some of those updates that were applied. So he decides to revert some of those changes that the security center pushed out and says, hey, I'm going to go back to the previous version of Firefox. So now he's less than standard. So everybody else is, pretty much at standard, but Sahr is less than standard. There's an alert that fires off from Splunk standpoint. It says, hey, we noticed Sahr's Firefox version is less than what the standard should be. I'm going to send this to security. I'm also going to send this now to Dunye. Dunye gets this alert. Dunye set up a script or program on her server or on her application, whatever she works with, that says whenever an alert comes in that talks about the Firefox version being less than whatever it is, automatically redirect that to Security Center. Security Center, as soon as you get this alert from this specific application, push out the latest change back up to the laptop. Also lock out that user from that. There's a script that does that. So now Sahr's locked out. His updates are there. Sahr has to now report to Dunye and tell why his version was downgraded for whatever reason. And then security also has to talk to Sahr, say, why the heck did you downgrade your version when we clearly said you have to be at standard? When it comes to making sure that your organization doesn't have vulnerabilities, we have, in the recent years, there's been over billions of dollars worth of hacks that have happened. So from Experian to Microsoft to Facebook to all the big organizations, and many that have either went public or those that have remained hidden, have probably been hacked in some way, shape, or form. If Sahr works at Microsoft that has access to your personal information somehow, whether your address, your kids' information, your parents' information, whatever it may be, family members, if he gets hacked and he has access to a database that has that information in it, guess what? now you are liable to be impacted because of Sahr's foolishness of downgrading his Firefox version. That's just, a it's a oversimplified, explanation, but you get the idea that if anyone does something that can make an organization liable to be compromised, it's not just the organization that can be compromised, it's you as an individual that can be compromised, depending on that user's sort of role and what they have access to. Because if I can basically come to your house as you and impersonate you, I can get into any room that you have in your house. So at that point in time, I'm you, and I can do anything in the house that you normally would do. I can go in and basically take all your stuff in your room. I can go and tell your kids to do whatever, and they'll think that, it's me talking as you. I can do anything as you, and that's a very dangerous place to be. So from an impersonation standpoint, it's very problematic if you have users doing rogue things. We call it rogue IT or shadow IT in environments that when you tell them, hey, no, we did tell you to install this application and we're telling you not to do that for a reason. We didn't tell you to downgrade this because we're telling you not to do that for a reason. So everybody needs to be in compliance. And that's why they have systems compliance, because if they're not, they're very liable to be affected or infected by malware and other things that can basically expose your data and then also cost companies millions, if not millions of dollars. That's a really simplistic sort of, view of this. We'll get a lot more technical as we go through, but the idea really is just to talk about Splunk in a basically low-level conversation and make it so that anyone that's not been in tech can understand this. I hope this is clear. But if you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out. Post your questions or comments, below in the social media sites, and we'll get back to you.
I want to give a shout out to a couple of people. So one, my wife, Tierra. Really, really thankful for allowing me to be able to do what I love on a day-to-day basis. I know I've taken a lot away from the family in terms of time by dedicating myself into being a subject matter expert in my field, and that takes a lot of hours and a lot of time away from family. So really thank you, babe, for allowing me to do this. Mom and Dad, for pushing me into any space but tech. Honestly, helped me to learn a lot. I know there's this whole debate about, college versus, boot camp, but they helped me to get into college and to learn how to learn. And I think that's a skill set in itself, to be able to figure out how to learn in your own way. So I want to, definitely thank you all for pushing me and helping me to kind of grow in that area. Of course, my kids for constantly being that motivator for me. My Splunk folks. I'm not going to say all your names because I'm sorry. It's been a while. Dre, Andrew, Bo, Renzo, Joy, Jahan, Sean, please don't kill me if I forget your name. But yeah, all my tech folks at Splunk that helped me get into this role. I mean, into this space where I'm at right now. I mean, I'm really, really thankful for you all for grilling me through those initial interviews and helping me to kind of learn and push myself. And then last but not least, Nick and Jordan for their help and dealing with me to kind of get this setup going here. Those are our producers, content devs. So for those who are watching this, they're doing a fantastic job, and they will continue to do fantastic work. And I'm looking forward to kind of see where we grow from here. So thank you all for watching. I hope you guys learned a lot through this episode. Stay tuned for more episodes. And this is Africans in Tech.